I'm Samantha Miller, 34, and I'll never forget staring at my name card placed on a tiny table in the hallway outside my sister Allison's wedding reception. Through the open doors I could see crystal chandeliers illuminating smiling guests at elegant tables adorned with white roses. Laughter and champagne toasts echoed while I sat alone next to the restrooms. When Allison caught my eye from her head table and smirked, something inside me broke. I quietly gathered my purse, stood up and walked out. Nobody noticed, but they would soon. Before I dive into this story, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Drop your location in the comments and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to stand up for yourself against family. Trust me, you'll want to stick around to see how this wedding disaster turned into the most unexpected turning point of my life. Growing up with Allison was like living in a constant competition that I never signed up for. From the time she was born when I was 5, our mother Catherine made it clear who the favorite was. Allison's dance recitals warranted family vacations to competitions, while my academic achievements barely got a mention at dinner. This wasn't just my perception. It was blatant enough that even teachers and family friends would awkwardly try to compensate by giving me extra attention. Despite this, I worked hard to be the responsible older sister. When our father passed away unexpectedly during my second year of college, I deferred my dream of graduate school to help stabilize our family finances. I took a full-time job while finishing my degree at night, and even contributed nearly $30,000 toward Allison's college tuition when our mother struggled to make ends meet. Allison never knew this mother made me promise to keep it our secret so Allison wouldn't feel guilty. When Allison got engaged to Robert Caldwell last year, I was genuinely happy for her. Robert came from a well-respected family, seemed kind and level-headed, and brought out a softer side in my sister I rarely saw. When she tearfully asked me to be her maid of honor, I thought perhaps we'd finally moved past our childhood rivalry. I spent hours helping her research venues, sampling cakes, and organizing her bridal shower. Then 2 months before the wedding, everything changed. I received a text, not even a call, from Allison informing me that her college roommate Jessica would now be maid of honor, and I would be just a bridesmaid. Her explanation was that Jessica had more time to handle the responsibilities. The demotion stung, but I swallowed my pride and continued helping with wedding preparations, wanting to support my sister on her special day. The night before the wedding, our family hosted a rehearsal dinner at an upscale restaurant downtown. As I helped adjust place cards at the table, I overheard my mother commenting to Aunt Susan, "Samantha really should have worn something more slimming. And would it kill her to date someone 34 and still single? She'll scare off any prospects looking so desperate at the wedding." I pretended not to hear, though my cheeks burned with embarrassment. Across the room, Robert caught my eye and gave me a sympathetic smile. He'd always been kind to me, sometimes seemingly uncomfortable with how my family treated me. Later, while picking up my wrap from the coat room, I froze hearing Allison's voice around the corner. "Just wait until Sam sees where she's sitting tomorrow." Allison giggled to her bridesmaids. "I've got a special spot just for her." Jessica's voice replied, "Isn't that a little mean, Ollie? Please." After she tried stealing attention during my engagement by announcing her promotion, she needs to learn her place. The promotion she referred to was my advancement to senior account manager after 7 years at my company, a achievement I'd mentioned once during a family dinner 3 days after her engagement. I hadn't even posted about it on social media to avoid overshadowing her news. The wedding morning arrived with clear skies and perfect June temperature. I arrived at the hotel suite early to help Allison get ready, curling her hair and helping her with her makeup, while the other bridesmaids were still having breakfast. When the photographer arrived, my mother quickly ushered me out of the frame. "Bridesmaids' photos are later, Samantha. These are just for Allison and me. And Jessica, of course," she added, waving the maid of honor over. I stepped back, nodding politely. When I caught my reflection in the mirror, my mother tesked loudly, "That dress really does nothing for your figure, Samantha. Couldn't you have had it taken in more?" It was the exact bridesmaid dress Allison had chosen, in the exact size the boutique recommended. But I just smiled tightly and said, "You look beautiful, Mom." As the ceremony approached, Allison became sickeningly sweet, hugging me tightly in front of the photographer and loudly proclaiming, "I'm so lucky to have my big sister here on my special day." The moment the camera lowered, she stepped away, her smile dropping instantly. I should have known then what was coming. But somehow I still wasn't prepared. The ceremony itself was picture perfect. The historic stone church was adorned with cascading white orchids and soft blush roses, and Allison looked genuinely breathtaking in her custom-designed gown. I stood in my assigned place among the bridesmaids, maintaining my composure despite noticing several guests whispering and glancing my way. During the vows, I caught Allison and Mother exchanging, knowing looks in my direction, but I focused on the ceremony, determined not to create any drama. As we processed out after the ceremony, Robert's brother Michael, who had been paired with me for the wedding party, leaned over slightly. "Everything okay?" he asked quietly. "You seem a bit tense." "Just emotional," I replied with a practiced smile. "It's a beautiful ceremony." He didn't seem convinced but nodded and continued walking. During the photos on the church steps, the photographer positioned me repeatedly at the far end of every group shot. When I tried to stand beside Allison for one photo, my mother smoothly intercepted, placing Jessica there instead. "Blood relatives will be in the next set," she said smoothly. But when those family photos happened, I was somehow needed to hold something for Allison and missed those shots too. The cocktail hour was held in the garden of the luxury hotel hosting the reception. I stood alone most of the hour as family members mysteriously found reasons to drift away whenever I approached. I attempted to mingle with extended family but kept overhearing snippets of conversations that stopped when I drew near. At one point I clearly heard my mother telling my father's cousin, "Don't mind Samantha, she's always been dramatic. We've learned to work around her moods." This was particularly cutting as I'd always prided myself on being the level-headed, reasonable one in the family. Robert's parents came over and chatted with me briefly, their kindness making the contrast with my own family's behavior even more stark. "Mr. Caldwell seemed particularly confused by some of the dynamics he was witnessing. "Your mother mentioned you might not be staying for the entire reception," he said, looking puzzled. "Something about an early morning tomorrow." I had no such plans, and had taken Monday off work specifically for the wedding. Before I could clarify, the announcement came for guests to find their reception seating. I followed the elegantly dressed crowd into the grand ballroom, pausing at the seating chart to locate my table. I scanned the list once, twice, frowning when I couldn't find my name. The wedding planner, a brisk woman in her 50s, noticed my confusion. "Samantha Miller. Let me see." She checked her tablet then. Her expression shifted subtly. "Ah yes, you're at table. Well, it's actually right here." She pointed to a small table that had been set up in the hallway between the ballroom and the restrooms. A single-place setting sat on a table meant for hotel staff to use for water pitchers. My name card was propped against the lone water glass. "There must be a mistake," I said, my voice barely audible. The wedding planner had the decency to look uncomfortable. The bride was very specific about the seating arrangements. "I'm sorry." As I stood frozen by the tiny table, my cousin Melissa walked by, noticed my seating arrangement, and actually snickered before continuing into the ballroom. The humiliation washed over me in a wave so powerful I felt physically ill. Taking a deep breath, I peered into the ballroom where I could see all the guests finding their seats at beautifully decorated tables. At the front, Allison sat at the sweeping head table with Robert, their parents, and the maid of honor. As if sensing my gaze, Allison turned and looked directly at me, standing by my hallway table. The corner of her mouth curled up in a triumphant smirk before she turned back to laugh at something Jessica said. I stood there for one more moment, the noise of the celebration suddenly seeming far away. Then with trembling hands I picked up my clutch purse and walked toward the ladies' room. Inside, I stared at my reflection, a bridesmaid in dusty rose, watching silent tears streak her carefully applied makeup. A decision crystallized in that moment. I would not sit alone in a hallway while my family celebrated inside. I would not give Allison the satisfaction of watching me endure this humiliation. With steady hands, I repaired my makeup, straightened my spine, and walked out. As I passed through the hotel lobby, I heard someone call my name. It was Michael Roberts' brother, looking concerned. "Samantha, are you okay? Are you leaving?" I paused, considering how to answer. "I'm not feeling well," I said finally, the half-truth bitter on my tongue. "Please give the couple my congratulations." His frown deepened. "Let me call you a cab at least." I drove myself. "But thank you, Michael." And with that, I walked out the grand entrance, handed my ticket to the valet, and drove away from my sister's wedding, having no idea that this moment would set in motion events that would change our family forever. The drive home was a blur of streetlights and quiet tears. I remember gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white, occasionally catching my reflection in the rear-view mirror, a woman in a bridesmaid dress, mascara tracking down her cheeks. By the time I pulled into my apartment complex, something strange had happened. The tears had stopped, and in their place was a profound calm I had never experienced before. I kicked off my heels at the door and changed into comfortable clothes. Sitting on my couch with a cup of tea, I scrolled mindlessly through my phone until I came across the first wedding photos being posted on social media. Smiling faces, champagne, toasts, and elaborate centerpieces filled the images. Comments poured in about the perfect day and beautiful family. Not a single photo showed my empty hallway table. Around midnight, curious friends began commenting, asking where I was in the photos. Before I could decide whether to respond, Allison beat me to it, posting, "Unfortunately, Sam wasn't feeling well and had to leave early. We missed her." The fakeness of it made my stomach turn. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was Michael Roberts' brother. "Got your number from the wedding party contact list. Just wanted to check if you're okay." That seating arrangement was completely out of line. I stared at the message, surprised that anyone had noticed or cared. I typed back a simple thanks for his concern. His response came quickly. It wasn't right, and it wasn't a last-minute mistake either. Allison had been planning it for months. I overheard things. A moment later, my phone buzzed again with an image. It was a screenshot of a group chat called A&R Wedding Party from 3 months earlier. Allison had written, "Table assignments done. Special spot for Sam where she belongs, out of sight." Jessica had responded, "Allie, that seems harsh. She is your sister." Allison's reply, "Time to put Sam in her place. She always thinks she's so perfect." I sat motionless, staring at indisputable evidence of my sister's deliberate cruelty. It wasn't just wedding day tension or oversight, it was calculated humiliation. As painful as the confirmation was, it also validated what I had felt for years but always dismissed as oversensitivity. That afternoon, my mother called. I almost didn't answer, but some masochistic curiosity made me pick up. "Samantha Jean Miller," she began without preamble. "How dare you embarrass this family by walking out of your sister's wedding? Do you have any idea what people are saying?" The familiar guilt and defensiveness rose automatically, but this time something different happened. The calm from last night returned, and I heard myself respond in a voice I barely recognized. "How dare I? How dare you and Allison seat me in a hallway like an unwanted stray while the rest of the family celebrated inside? How dare you treat me with such disrespect and then expect me to smile and take it?" The silence on the other end was deafening. Well, there was a mix-up with the seating. My mother finally stammered. "There was no mix-up. Allison planned it months ago. I've seen the messages." Another long pause. "You've always been so dramatic, Samantha. Allison was just having a little fun. Publicly humiliating someone isn't fun, Mother. It's cruelty, and I'm done accepting it." What is that supposed to mean? Her voice had lost its authoritative edge, replaced with something that sounded almost like fear. It means I'm setting boundaries. I've spent my entire life supporting this family emotionally, practically, and yes, financially. Did you think I didn't know about the money? The sharp intake of breath told me I'd hit a nerve. What money? She asked carefully. The $30,000 you said went to Allison's tuition, the loans you've never repaid, the credit card in my name I never opened. I've been tracking it all, Mother. This was partly a bluff. I knew about the tuition and loans, but the credit card was a suspicion I'd had when strange mail arrived last month. Her reaction confirmed it. Those were family emergencies, she hissed. After everything I've done for you. This conversation is over, I interrupted. I'll be consulting a financial advisor this week about all family accounts. I suggest you prepare Allison for that conversation. I ended the call and sat in my quiet apartment, heart pounding but mind clear. For the first time in my adult life I had stood up to my mother, and it felt like breaking the surface after being underwater for years. What I didn't realize was that this was just the first breath of many I would need to take. The betrayal at the wedding was just the visible tip of a massive iceberg of family secrets that was about to be exposed. 3 days after the wedding, I received another text from Michael. Could we meet for coffee? There's something you should know. We arranged to meet at a quiet cafe downtown the following morning. I arrived first, choosing a table in the back corner where we wouldn't be overheard. Michael entered a few minutes later, looking tired and carrying a manila envelope. Thanks for meeting me, he said, settling into the chair across from me. First, I want to apologize for not saying something at the wedding. I knew about the seating arrangement the day before and should have spoken up. I appreciated his directness. Why didn't you? He sighed, running a hand through his hair. Family politics. Robert was already stressed about some tensions between our parents and Allison. I didn't want to add to it before the ceremony. It was cowardly, and I'm sorry. What tensions? I asked, curiosity piqued. That's part of why I wanted to talk to you. He glanced around before continuing. Robert's been concerned about Allison's behavior for months. Little lies, mood swings, secretive phone calls. 2 weeks before the wedding, he found documents from your family business in her bag, financial records, account numbers, property deeds. This caught me off guard. What family business? We don't have a family business. Michael's expression shifted to confusion. Miller Family Holdings, the property management company your grandparents started. My blank stare must have told him everything. He slowly pushed the envelope toward me. These are copies of what Robert found. Allison left them out one night after having too much wine. He photographed everything before putting them back. With trembling fingers, I opened the envelope and pulled out several pages of documents. The letterhead read Miller Family Holdings LLC with my grandparents' names listed as founders. Page after page detailed properties, accounts, and investments worth millions, none of which I had ever heard about. One document caught my eye, a trust amendment dated shortly before my grandparents died in a car accident when I was 15. It clearly stated that the trust assets would be divided equally between Catherine Miller, my mother, and Samantha Miller, me, upon my 30th birthday. I looked up at Michael, my mind racing. I turned 34 years ago. I never received anything. I didn't even know this existed. Michael nodded grimly. Robert confronted Allison about it last week. She claimed you had knowingly signed over your portion to your mother years ago because you didn't want the responsibility. I shook my head slowly. I never signed anything like that. Never. That's what Robert suspected. He hesitated before adding, there's more. The business has been struggling lately. Large withdrawals, questionable investments. Robert thinks your mother and Allison have been misappropriating funds. Your funds? The cafe suddenly felt too warm, the noise too loud. My entire understanding of my family's financial situation, the struggles after my father's death, my sacrifices for college, the modest lifestyle crumbled before my eyes. I need to see the original documents, I said finally. And I need a good lawyer. Michael nodded. I can recommend someone. Robert's feeling terrible about all this. He had no idea how deep it went until recently. After leaving the cafe, I drove straight to the law offices of James Patterson, my father's old friend and our family attorney. The receptionist was reluctant to let me see him without an appointment, but I insisted it was a family emergency. James looked surprised when I entered his office. Samantha, I wasn't expecting you. Congratulations on your sister's wedding. I was sorry to miss it. James, I need to see all documents related to Miller Family Holdings and any trusts established by my grandparents, I said without preamble. His expression flickered briefly before settling into careful neutrality. Those are confidential family matters, Samantha. I'd need your mother's authorization. As a beneficiary, I have a legal right to see them, I interrupted, bluffing with confidence I didn't entirely feel. I know about the trust that was supposed to distribute to me when I turned 30. I know about the properties. What I don't know is why it was all kept from me. James removed his glasses, suddenly looking much older. Your mother assured me you had been informed and had voluntarily ceded control to her. She provided signed documents. I never signed anything, I stated firmly. James, either you show me those documents now or my next call will be to the State Bar Association. After a long moment, he nodded and called his secretary to bring in the Miller family files. For the next 2 hours, I pored over documents revealing a family fortune I never knew existed. Properties in 3 states, investment accounts, and a trust worth over $4 million that should have partially come to me 4 years ago. Most disturbing of all was a document transferring my interest to my mother with a signature that looked similar to mine but contained subtle differences I could immediately spot. This isn't my signature, I said, pushing the paper toward James. It's forged. His face paled. Samantha, these are serious accusations. They're facts, James. And as the family attorney, you had a duty to verify these transfers directly with me. My voice was steady despite the anger building inside me. I'll need copies of everything. Today. That evening I drove to my childhood home using my old key to enter through the side door. The house was empty. Mother was at a spa retreat celebrating the successful wedding. In my father's old office, I found a locked file cabinet that had always been off limits. Using the small key I'd discovered hidden in his desk years ago but had never dared use, I opened the bottom drawer. Inside were the original trust documents, property deeds, and something else, credit card statements and loan applications in my name dating back 6 years. As I flipped through them, a sickening realization dawned. My mother and sister hadn't just hidden my inheritance, they had stolen my identity to fund their lifestyles while I worked overtime to make ends meet. As I photographed everything with shaking hands, my phone rang. It was Allison. Mother said you've been making ridiculous accusations, she said without greeting. Whatever Michael told you is a lie. You need to drop this now. I'm looking at the forged documents right now, Allison. I know everything. A beat of silence. Then her voice dropped an octave, all pretense gone. You'll never prove anything and no one will believe you anyway. Who would take your word over Mother's over mine? You're just jealous of my perfect wedding, my perfect husband, my perfect life. This isn't about your wedding, Allison. It's about years of theft and lies. Her laugh was cold. Good luck with that. We've been managing these accounts for years while you were too stupid to even know they existed. Back off now or you'll regret it. As the call ended, I sat in my father's chair surrounded by evidence of years of betrayal, making a promise to myself. This isn't over. I'm done being your punching bag. The next morning I met with Diane Levinson, a forensic accountant recommended by Michael. In her sleek downtown office, I spread out the documents I'd gathered. This is quite extensive, she remarked, scanning through the files. We're looking at years of systematic fraud here. Can we prove it was done without my knowledge or consent? She nodded slowly. The forged signatures are a good start. We can have those analyzed by an expert. The credit applications using your social security number but with mailing addresses you never lived at, that's compelling. And the timeline of withdrawals from the trust accounts correlates with large purchases your mother and sister made. Like Allison's wedding, I asked. Exactly like that. According to these records, approximately $175,000 was withdrawn from your portion of the trust 3 months ago, with a note indicating family celebration expenses. The irony was almost too much. I'd been seated in a hallway at a wedding I had unknowingly paid for. Over the next 2 weeks, I worked with Diane and a lawyer named Marcus Jenkins to build my case. We documented every unauthorized transaction, every forged signature, every fraudulent credit application. The total misappropriated from my inheritance amounted to just over $2.3 million over 4 years. Your mother and sister have been living off your money while keeping you in the dark, Marcus explained during one of our meetings. Based on the evidence, we have grounds for both civil and criminal complaints. The thought of criminal charges against my own family made me hesitate, but I remembered Allison's cold voice on the phone. You'll never prove anything. While this investigation continued quietly, life went on. Allison and Robert returned from their honeymoon in the Maldives, and I received a text from my grandmother's nursing home reminding me about her 80th birthday celebration that weekend. I hadn't seen any family members since the wedding and considered skipping the party. But something told me I needed to attend to show them I wasn't hiding or ashamed. The party was held in the private dining room of my grandmother's upscale care facility. When I walked in wearing a simple but elegant blue dress, conversations stuttered to a halt. My mother recovered first, her smile not reaching her eyes. Samantha, we weren't sure you'd come after your episode at the wedding. I wouldn't miss Grandma's birthday, I replied calmly, walking past her to kiss my grandmother's papery cheek. Throughout the afternoon, I maintained a composed demeanor, making polite conversation while noticing the concerned glances exchanged between my mother and Allison. At one point, I mentioned casually to my uncle that I was reviewing some old family business documents and watched my mother nearly spill her drink. As I helped serve cake, I leaned close to Allison and whispered, "The Cartwright property on Lake Avenue, did you sell it before or after the wedding?" The color drained from her face. It was a property I had just discovered in the documents, one that had indeed been sold recently to fund what I suspected was her honeymoon. "You need to stop this," she hissed back. "You're going to destroy this family." "That process began long before I knew anything about it," I replied, softly, moving away to offer cake to another relative. 3 days after the birthday party, I received an urgent call from Michael. "Your mother has called an emergency family meeting at her house tonight. Robert's been asked to attend too." "Did Robert mention what it's about?" I asked, suspicion rising. "No, but he seems worried. Be careful, Samantha." I arrived at my mother's house that evening to find her, Allison and Robert, already seated in the formal living room. My mother's face was a mask of grieved concern that I immediately recognized from childhood. It was the expression she wore when she was about to twist a situation to her advantage. "Samantha, please sit down," she said, gesturing to a chair directly across from her. "We need to discuss something very serious." I remained standing. "What's this about?" Allison dabbed at non-existent tears. "How could you, Sam? After everything this family has done for you, what are you talking about?" My mother's voice hardened. "The Covington sapphires. Your grandmother's jewelry that was stored in the family safe. They're missing, and you were the last one to visit before they disappeared." I stared at her in disbelief. "I haven't been in the family safe in years. We have security footage of you entering the house last week when no one was home," Allison said. "And now irreplaceable family heirlooms worth over $200,000 are gone." With sickening clarity, I understood their strategy. They were setting me up, creating a narrative that would paint me as a thief and undermine any accusations I might make about the trust. "This is absurd," I said, looking directly at Robert, who seemed uncomfortable. "I came here to gather documents about my inheritance, the one that was hidden from me. I never went near the safe." My mother stood, her voice trembling with fake emotion. We've already filed a police report, Samantha. Detective Harris will be contacting you. If you return the jewels now, perhaps we can work something out within the family. You're framing me, I said, the realization crystal clear. You're trying to discredit me because you know I've discovered the truth about the trust. What trust? My mother asked innocently, looking at Robert. You see how she makes up these stories? Robert shifted uncomfortably but remained silent. Allison moved to stand beside my mother, their united front leaving me isolated. I think you should leave now, Samantha, my mother said coldly. And consider carefully what your next move will be. Family matters should stay within the family. As I turned to leave, my phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number that I answered outside on the porch. Miss Miller, this is Detective Harris with the police department. We need you to come in for questioning regarding some missing jewelry. My heart sank as I realized how quickly their plan was moving. I'll be there with my attorney, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. The next morning, Marcus accompanied me to the police station where I was questioned for 3 hours about jewelry I had never touched. Security footage did indeed show me entering my mother's house, but conveniently, the cameras didn't cover the hallway leading to the safe room. I was released without charges, but the detective's skeptical expression made it clear this wasn't over. They're escalating, Marcus said as we left the station. This confirms they're worried about what you've discovered. That afternoon, I received a call from an unlisted number. Samantha, it's Michael. I heard about what happened. This has gone too far. They're trying to frame me for theft, Michael. They filed a police report. I know, and I can help. I was with you that afternoon. The timestamp on the security footage shows 3:15 p.m. last Tuesday. You were having coffee with me at Westside Cafe. I have the receipt, and the cafe has security cameras. I nearly collapsed with relief. You testify to that. Absolutely. What they're doing is wrong. And there's something else. Robert's having serious doubts about Allison. He found another set of documents hidden in their apartment. For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. But that hope was short-lived. The next day, I was laid off from my job, a position I'd held for 8 years with an exemplary record. Budget cuts, my manager explained, awkwardly avoiding eye contact. But as I packed my desk, a sympathetic coworker slipped me a note. Catherine Miller called our CEO yesterday. Something about an ongoing police investigation. That night, I sat in my apartment surrounded by packed boxes. I could no longer afford the rent without my job and considered giving up. My mother and sister had money connections and a lifetime of practice manipulating narratives in their favor. My phone had been ringing all day with friends and distant family members asking awkward questions about the stolen jewelry. Several had mentioned hearing I was having mental health issues. The systematic destruction of my reputation and livelihood in less than a week showed just how far they were willing to go. For a moment, the weight of it all seemed too much to bear. Then my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Don't give up. We believe you. Meet tomorrow, Robert and Michael. In that moment of darkness, I realized I had found something unexpected in this nightmare: allies who saw through the facade my family had maintained for years. And with that small flame of support, my resolve hardened. If my mother and sister wanted a fight, they would get one. The following morning, I met Michael at a quiet diner outside the city limits where we were unlikely to run into anyone who knew our families. He was already seated in a back booth when I arrived, and the genuine concern on his face was almost my undoing after days of hostility. "How are you holding up?" he asked as I slid into the seat across from him. "I've been better," I admitted, attempting a weak smile. "Lost my job. Most of my friends think I'm having a breakdown, and I had to move out of my apartment yesterday. Currently living in an extended stay hotel." Michael shook his head in disgust. "It's unbelievable how quickly they mobilized against you. Robert's devastated. He had no idea who he was really marrying." "Where is Robert?" I asked, noticing his absence despite the text message. "He's meeting us separately. He's worried Allison might be tracking his phone." As if on cue, Robert appeared at the entrance, scanning the diner before spotting us and walking over. He looked haggard with dark circles under his eyes, and his normally neat appearance slightly disheveled. "Samantha," he said, sliding in beside Michael, "I can't begin to tell you how sorry I am. I had suspicions about certain things, but I never imagined the extent of what was happening." "When did you start to realize?" I asked. He sighed heavily. "Small things at first. Contradictions in stories about family finances. Your mother and Allison whispering and changing subjects when I entered rooms. Then I found financial documents Allison had hidden that mentioned your name on accounts you supposedly had no connection to. After the wedding seating incident, I started asking more direct questions," he continued. "Allison kept changing her explanation. First, it was a last-minute mix-up. Then, it was the wedding planner's error. Finally, she admitted it was intentional, but claimed it was because you had threatened to make a scene during the reception. The lies stung, but I wasn't surprised. And you didn't believe that?" "No. It didn't align with anything I'd ever seen from you. And now with these theft accusations." He trailed off looking troubled. "We want to help," Michael interjected. "I've already given a statement to Detective Harris confirming your alibi for when the jewelry supposedly disappeared. And Robert has something that might be useful." Robert pulled a USB drive from his pocket and slid it across the table. "I've been documenting everything I've found. Account numbers, conversations, I've overheard photos of documents. I'm not sure what's relevant, but it's all there." I felt a surge of gratitude. "Thank you, both of you. I don't understand why you're putting yourselves at risk like this." "Because it's the right thing to do," Michael said simply. "And because..." He hesitated, looking slightly embarrassed. "I've always thought you deserved better than how they treated you." That unexpected moment of kindness nearly broke through the emotional wall I'd carefully constructed. I quickly changed the subject to more practical matters. "I need to understand exactly what assets were in the trust and what's happened to them. Do either of you know if my grandmother might have information?" Robert and Michael exchanged glances. "Eleanor might," Robert said carefully. "But she has good days and bad days. Sometimes she's completely lucid, other times." He shrugged. "It's worth trying," I decided. "I'll visit her this afternoon." After our meeting, I drove to Sunny Acres, the upscale nursing facility where my grandmother had lived since suffering a stroke 3 years earlier. I'd visited regularly, though. In recent months, my mother had claimed Grandma was too confused for visitors and discouraged me from coming. I found my grandmother in the facility's sunroom staring out at the garden. At 80, Eleanor Miller still maintained the elegant posture and shrewd eyes that had intimidated business associates during her younger years. "Grandma," I said softly, sitting beside her. "It's Samantha." She turned slowly, confusion crossing her face before recognition dawned. "Samantha, my dear girl, they said you weren't visiting anymore." "I've been here, Grandma. They told me you didn't want visitors." A flash of her old sharpness returned to her eyes. "Nonsense. Catherine's trying to keep you away." For the next hour, we talked about innocuous topics as I gauged her mental state. She was clearly having one of her better days, following conversation and recalling recent events with clarity. Finally, I broached the subject I'd come to discuss. "Grandma, I need to ask you about the family trust. The one you and Grandpa established." Her hand, which had been patting mine, suddenly stilled. "They never told you, did they?" "No, I only found out recently." A profound sadness crossed her face. "We wanted to protect you. After your father died, we saw how Catherine favored Allison. We changed the trust to ensure you'd be taken care of." She leaned closer, her voice dropping. "Your grandfather and I made sure you'd receive your portion when you turned 30. Catherine fought us on it. She managed to prevent it from happening," I said gently. "She's been using my portion of the trust funds for years." Anger flashed in my grandmother's eyes, a glimpse of the formidable businesswoman she had once been. That conniving. She stopped herself, taking a deep breath. "There's something you should know, Samantha. Something important." She gestured for me to come closer and whispered, "In my suite behind the Monet print there's a wall safe. The combination is your birthday, month, day, year. Inside is a key to a safe deposit box at First National. The original will and trust documents are there. Catherine doesn't know about it. I stared at her in amazement. You kept copies? Not copies. Originals. The documents Catherine has been using are the copies. She gripped my hand with surprising strength. I always knew this day might come. Your grandfather and I tried to protect you the only way we knew how. With my grandmother's permission, I found the hidden safe and retrieved the key along with a letter addressed to me in my grandfather's handwriting. Back in my hotel room, I read his words from beyond the grave, a warning about my mother's financial manipulations and his regret at not addressing them more directly during his lifetime. The following day, Marcus accompanied me to First National Bank, where the safe deposit box yielded exactly what my grandmother had promised: original legal documents, establishing my rightful claim to half of the Miller family assets along with a detailed inventory of what those assets included. This changes everything, Marcus said as we examined the papers. With these originals, we can prove the documents your mother has been using are fraudulent. That evening, I received an unexpected call from Robert's mother, Elizabeth Caldwell. Samantha, I hope you don't mind me calling. Robert gave me your number. Not at all, Mrs. Caldwell. Please call me Elizabeth. I wanted you to know that my husband and I don't believe these absurd accusations about stolen jewelry. We've known your family for years, and while we've always had our concerns about certain dynamics, we never imagined anything like this. Her support brought a lump to my throat. Thank you, Elizabeth. That means more than you know. There's something else, she continued. At our Memorial Day barbecue before the wedding, I overheard your mother and Allison discussing financial matters. Something about Sam's accounts and moving money before she finds out. I didn't understand the significance then, but Robert has explained some things and I thought you should know. By the time the call ended, I had another potential witness to add to our growing case. The following week, I started seeing Dr. Rachel Cohen, a therapist specializing in family trauma. Initially skeptical about therapy, I found myself looking forward to our sessions where for the first time I could speak freely about my family experiences without fear of judgment. What you're describing is a classic pattern of narcissistic family dynamics, Dr. Cohen explained during our third session. You were cast in the role of scapegoat while your sister was the golden child. These roles are assigned early and can be extremely damaging to one's sense of self-worth. But why me? I asked a question that had haunted me for years. Often it has nothing to do with you personally. The scapegoat is frequently the child who shows the most independence or resistance to control. Your strength threatened the family system. Those words resonated deeply. For years, I had internalized the belief that I was somehow fundamentally lacking, that if I could just be better, smarter, more accomplished, my family would finally love me properly. The possibility that my treatment stemmed from their issues rather than my failings was simultaneously liberating and heartbreaking. With Dr. Cohen's guidance, I began establishing healthier boundaries and developing strategies for the inevitable confrontation to come. I worked on recognizing and countering the manipulation tactics my family had used for years, preparing myself emotionally for the battle ahead. As summer turned to early fall, our case continued to build. The forensic accountant had traced millions in misappropriated funds. The handwriting expert confirmed the signatures on financial documents were forgeries. Detective Harris had quietly closed the jewelry theft investigation after security footage from the cafe confirmed my alibi. I was beginning to feel cautiously optimistic when Michael called one evening, his voice tense. Samantha, something's wrong. Robert's been trying to reach me for days, but now he's not answering texts or calls. A sense of foreboding washed over me. When did you last hear from him? 3 days ago. He mentioned Allison was acting strange, secretive phone calls, unexplained absences. He was planning to confront her about some new documents he found. Have you gone to their apartment? That's the thing I went by today, and Allison said he's on a business trip to Chicago. but his assistant told me all his trips were canceled this week. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. Michael, there's something else you should know. I haven't heard from you in almost a week. What I texted you yesterday about meeting up this weekend. I never received anything from you. There was a long pause before Michael spoke again, his voice lower. We need to meet. Now. But not anywhere we've met before. We agreed on a 24-hour diner near the highway 30 minutes outside the city. When I arrived, Michael was already there looking around nervously. I think they're watching us, he said without preamble as I slid into the booth. Someone's been in my apartment. Things are moved, files rearranged. What's going on, Michael? He pulled out his phone and showed me a series of text messages supposedly between him and Allison discussing ways to manipulate me and gather information. I never sent these, he insisted. Someone must have cloned my phone or hacked my accounts. I showed him my phone, no messages from him for the past week, though he insisted he'd sent several. They're intercepting our communications, I realized aloud. But why? What changed? Robert must have found something significant, Michael said. Something that scared them enough to take more drastic measures. As we sat there piecing together the implications, Michael's phone buzzed with a text. It was from Allison. Coffee tomorrow. Need to talk about Sam's situation. Michael looked up at me, his expression grim. They're trying to find out what I know. What we know? Be careful, I urged. If they're monitoring communications and possibly breaking into your apartment, this has escalated beyond what we anticipated. As I drove home that night, I noticed a car that seemed to be following me, staying a consistent distance behind, making the same turns. I took a series of random turns and eventually confirmed my suspicion when the car continued to trail me. Instead of returning to my hotel, I drove to the police station and waited inside until the car eventually left. That night, I lay awake, wondering what information could have triggered such an aggressive response. Whatever Robert had discovered, it was clear that my mother and sister were now desperate, and desperate people were dangerous. The next morning, I received a text from Michael that chilled me to the bone. Met with Allison. She knows everything. Robert told her about our meetings. Be careful. We'll explain more soon. I tried calling immediately but got no answer. When I tried again an hour later, his phone went straight to voicemail. By evening, I was seriously concerned and drove to his apartment only to find Allison leaving the building. She spotted me and smiled, not a normal smile but one that sent ice down my spine. Looking for Michael, she asked sweetly. He's not here. In fact, I don't think he'll be helping you anymore. It turns out blood really is thicker than water. As she walked away, I stood frozen on the sidewalk, the devastating realization washing over me. Michael, the one person I had trusted completely in this nightmare, had betrayed me or been turned somehow. Either way, I was truly alone now, with the walls closing in fast. By the following morning, I had moved to a new hotel under a different name and purchased a prepaid phone. If my family was monitoring me, I needed to be more careful. I met with Marcus and updated him on the latest developments. This level of surveillance suggests serious desperation, he observed. They're worried about what you might uncover. Or what I already have, I replied, sliding a folder across his desk. Diane completed her analysis. The total misappropriated funds amount to $2.3 million over 4 years. They didn't just take my inheritance, they used my identity to secure loans and credit lines worth another $450,000. Marcus whistled softly. This goes beyond civil fraud. We're talking criminal charges, identity theft, wire fraud, forgery. Is that a road you're prepared to go down? I had spent weeks wrestling with this question. Despite everything, sending my mother and sister to prison felt extreme, but their recent escalations had removed any lingering doubts. Yes, I said firmly. They've left me no choice. Over the next week, we prepared legal filings for both civil and criminal complaints. I also applied for a restraining order against my mother and Allison after documenting the surveillance and harassment. Marcus recommended filing everything simultaneously. to prevent them from hiding assets or destroying evidence once they received the first notification. We should be ready to file by next week, he informed me. The forensic report is comprehensive, and with your grandmother's original documents, we have a strong case. Parallel to the legal preparations, I began carefully rebuilding my support network. I called former colleagues and explained the situation, discovering that many had suspected something was amiss with my abrupt termination. My former boss, after hearing the full story, offered to provide a written statement about the suspicious call from my mother that preceded my layoff. I also made strategic social media posts, nothing directly accusing my family but subtle comments about discovering family truths and the importance of original documentation. These breadcrumbs created enough curiosity that several family friends reached out privately, many sharing their own stories of manipulative behavior they'd witnessed from my mother and Allison over the years. Catherine always spoke so poorly of you when you weren't around, my mother's former bridge partner confided. I never understood it because you were always so kind and accomplished. It seemed like she was jealous of you, which makes no sense for a mother. Another family friend, my father's college roommate, reached out with an even more significant revelation. Your dad once mentioned being concerned about Catherine's handling of family finances. He was planning to make some changes before his accident. I always wondered if that was just coincidence. The mention of my father's accident, a single-car crash that had been attributed to brake failure, sent a chill through me. I didn't want to venture down that particular rabbit hole but filed the information away nonetheless. As our legal strategy solidified, my phone rang with a call from a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. Samantha. It was my mother's voice, uncharacteristically soft. We need to talk, dear. This has all gotten out of hand. I have nothing to say to you, I replied coolly. Please, Samantha. Family shouldn't be at war like this. Allison and I realize we've made mistakes. We want to make things right. Her conciliatory tone was so foreign that for a moment I almost believed her. Almost. What's changed, Mother? The fact that I have evidence of your fraud, or that grandmother gave me the original trust documents. A sharp intake of breath told me my guess had hit home. I don't know what you're talking about. We just miss you. We want to heal our family. If you want to communicate with me, you can contact my attorney. I ended the call, my heart pounding. Within an hour, Allison called. Mom's hysterical because of you, she snapped. After everything she's done for you, this is how you repay her, by making up lies and threatening lawsuits. They're not lies, Allison. I have the documents, the financial records, everything. A pause. Then surprisingly, her tone changed completely. Okay, look, maybe things got out of hand. We never meant to hurt you. The trust money, we can work something out. You can have your portion back plus interest. Just drop all this legal nonsense. The sudden shift to negotiation confirmed we had them running scared. And the identity theft, the credit fraud, the false police report. Water under the bridge, she said dismissively. Family forgives. You've never forgiven anyone in your life, Allison. Her voice hardened again. Fine. Have it your way. But remember, you're not the only one with evidence. We have text messages between you and Michael plotting all this. We have witnesses who'll testify to your erratic behavior, your jealousy, your financial problems. Who do you think people will believe? Respected community members, or the unstable daughter who couldn't handle her sister's happiness? After ending that call, I sat in my hotel room considering their sudden change in tactics. The threats followed by olive branches suggested they were uncertain of their position, a mix of desperate intimidation and attempted appeasement. 2 days later, my mother called again, this time with a more specific proposal. We're prepared to offer you $500,000 to settle this quietly. No courts, no publicity, no damage to the family name. My portion of the trust alone is worth over $2 million, I replied, plus damages for the identity theft. Don't be greedy, Samantha. This is a generous offer considering the circumstances. What circumstances would those be? She sighed dramatically. Your history of emotional instability, the jealousy issues, the incident at the wedding that so many guests witnessed. I almost laughed at the absurdity. You mean when I was seated in the hallway and left that incident? You know how these things can look when presented a certain way. I'm not interested in your offer, Mother. I'll see you in court. 3 days before we were scheduled to file our legal complaints, I received a text from Michael. We need to talk. It's not what you think. Meet me at Riverside Park 2 p.m. tomorrow. Despite my reservations, curiosity won out. I arrived at the park early, positioning myself where I could observe the meeting spot before approaching. At precisely 2 p.m., Michael arrived alone, sitting on a bench overlooking the river. He looked troubled, repeatedly checking his phone. I approached cautiously, staying alert for any sign of a trap. Michael. He looked up, relief washing over his face. Samantha, thank God. I was afraid you wouldn't come. Why did you disappear? And what was that text about Allison knowing everything? He ran a hand through his hair, looking embarrassed. I'm so sorry. Allison showed up at my apartment that morning. Said Robert had told her everything about our meetings, our evidence gathering. She was eerily calm about it, said she understood why I'd want to help you but that I didn't have the full picture. And you believed her? No, but she showed me texts supposedly between you and Robert discussing how you were manipulating me to get back at them. They looked real, Sam. Then she said if I continued helping you, they'd go public with information about my past. What information? He looked away. I had a DUI in college that was expunged from my record. My firm doesn't know about it. If it came out, I could lose my partnership track. So you just abandoned me, without even a warning. I panicked, he admitted. Went to stay with a friend to think things through. But then Robert called me yesterday from a hotel, said he'd left Allison after finding evidence she'd been going through his files, recording his calls. He thinks they drugged him to get access to his phone and computer. Where is he now? Staying with our parents. He's afraid to return to the apartment. Michael leaned forward, his expression earnest. I'm sorry I disappeared. I should have trusted you, but I'm here now, and I want to help make this right. I studied his face, searching for signs of deception. His story was plausible, but after so many betrayals, trust didn't come easily. I appreciate the explanation, I said carefully. But I need some time to think about this. He nodded, looking disappointed but understanding. Of course. Just be careful, Sam. They're getting desperate. That evening I met Robert at his parents' house to verify Michael's story. Robert confirmed he had indeed left Allison after discovering she had installed spyware on his devices. I found specialized software on my laptop that forwards all my emails and texts to another account, he explained, looking haggard. When I confronted her, she denied everything, then claimed it was your mother's idea for family security. That's when I knew I had to get out. Do you believe Michael's story about why he disappeared? Robert nodded. Allison's always been good at finding people's weak spots. She probably did threaten him about the DUI. But I've known my brother my whole life. He wouldn't stay away because of that alone. Something else scared him. The next morning I was reviewing documents with Marcus when my phone rang. Michael again. Sam, we have a problem. Allison just called me. Your mother is arranging some kind of family counseling session at their house tonight. They're insisting Robert and I attend. I think they're planning something. What kind of something? I don't know, but it feels like a setup. They mentioned having evidence they want to present to everyone. After discussing it with Marcus, I made a decision. Tell them I'll be there, but I'm bringing my own evidence too. Are you sure that's wise? Marcus cautioned. Meeting them on their territory. I wasn't sure at all, but instinct told me this confrontation was inevitable. They want a showdown, they'll get one. But I'll be prepared. That evening, I arrived at my mother's house with a portfolio containing key documents and something else, a small digital recorder in my pocket that was already running. If they were planning to trap me somehow, I would have my own record of the conversation. As I walked up the familiar steps to the front door, a strange calm settled over me. Whatever happened inside, I knew this would be the last time I entered this house as a daughter seeking approval or acceptance. That chapter of my life was closing one way or another. Michael opened the door before I could knock, his expression a warning. "They're all in the living room," he whispered. "Be careful." I nodded and followed him inside, steeling myself for whatever confrontation awaited. The living room fell silent as I entered. My mother sat regally in her favorite armchair, Allison perched beside her on the antique love seat. Robert stood awkwardly by the fireplace while Michael moved to stand near him after ushering me in. The tableau had a staged quality like actors positioned for maximum dramatic effect. "Samantha," my mother greeted me, her voice honey-sweet with an undercurrent of venom. "Thank you for coming. Please sit down." I remained standing. "I'd prefer to stand, thank you." Her smile tightened. "As you wish. We've asked you here because this family situation has spiraled out of control, and it's time to resolve it privately within these walls." "I'm listening." Allison leaned forward, her expression a perfect mask of concern. "Sam, we're worried about you. Your behavior lately, the accusations, the legal threats, the paranoia, it's not like you. We think you need help." "Professional help?" my mother added, nodding sagely. "We've spoken with Dr. Richardson. He has an opening at his facility next week." I almost laughed at their transparency. Dr. Richardson ran an exclusive psychiatric hospital where wealthy families sometimes sent troublesome members for rest cures that conveniently removed them from financial or social conflicts. "I'm not going to a psychiatric facility, Mother. It would only be for observation," she insisted. "Just until you're feeling more balanced." "What my mother means," Allison interjected, "is that we love you, and we want to help you work through these delusions about family trusts and stolen identities." I glanced at Michael and Robert, whose uncomfortable expressions revealed their surprise at this approach. They hadn't been briefed on this particular strategy. "Delusions," I repeated calmly. "Is that what we're calling documented evidence now?" My mother sighed dramatically. "Samantha, these fantasies about missing inheritances, they're symptoms of a deeper issue. You've always struggled with jealousy toward your sister. The incident at the wedding was just the breaking point." "The incident where I was deliberately seated in a hallway," Allison made a dismissive gesture. "It was a last-minute change because of catering issues. We've been through this." "Actually," Robert interjected, "that's not true. Allison told me weeks before the wedding that she was planning a special surprise for Samantha's seating." Allison shot him a venomous look. "You're taking her side now, after everything we've been through." "I'm not taking sides," Robert replied evenly. "I'm stating facts." My mother quickly redirected. "This isn't about the wedding seating. This is about Samantha's alarming behavior. Since then, the break-ins at our house, the stolen jewelry, the harassment." "Break-ins?" I asked, genuinely confused. "Don't play innocent," Allison snapped. "We have security footage of you entering the house when no one was home." "For which date are you referring to?" I asked, my voice steady. "The day the jewelry supposedly disappeared. The day Michael has confirmed he was with me at a cafe across town. That's security footage." A flicker of uncertainty crossed my mother's face before she recovered. "There have been multiple incidents." "Documented where?" "With police reports. Evidence." "That's rich coming from you," Allison scoffed. "You're the one making wild accusations without proof." I set my portfolio on the coffee table. "Actually, I have substantial proof. Would you like to see it?" Before they could respond, Michael cleared his throat. "Before we go further, I think we should address something else." He looked directly at me. "Samantha, Allison showed me text messages between you and Robert discussing how you were manipulating me to get back at your family." I met his gaze steadily. "Those messages were fabricated, Michael. Just like the jewelry theft." "I know," he replied. "Robert confirmed they never existed." My mother stood abruptly. "This is ridiculous. Michael, you told us you had evidence of Samantha's plans, the recordings, the emails. Show her. Michael shook his head slowly. I never said that, Mrs. Miller. In fact, I've been recording my conversations with you and Allison for weeks, including your offers to pay me to stop helping Samantha. The color drained from my mother's face as she realized the trap she'd walked into. You've been recording us. That's illegal. Not in this state, I interjected. Single-party consent is all that's required. Allison stood now too, her composure cracking. This is absurd. You come into our home with these ridiculous accusations. They're not accusations, I interrupted, opening my portfolio. They're documented facts. Shall we start with the forged signatures on the trust transfers? Or perhaps the credit cards opened in my name with addresses I never lived at? Or maybe the original trust documents from grandmother's safe deposit box, the ones showing I was entitled to over $2 million when I turned 30. My mother's face had gone from pale to ashen. Where did you get those? From grandmother. She kept the originals, knowing you might try something like this. Eleanor is hardly a reliable source, my mother scoffed, though her voice lacked conviction. Her memory comes and goes. The documents speak for themselves, I replied. As does the forensic accounting report detailing every unauthorized withdrawal from my accounts over the past 4 years, including, interestingly enough, $175,000 for a certain wedding. Allison's composure finally shattered. It was Mother's idea, all of it. She said you'd never notice that you were too busy with your career to pay attention to family finances, my mother gasped. Allison, how dare you? How dare I? Allison's voice rose hysterically. You're the one who forged her signature. You're the one who said we deserved her portion because we maintained the family image, while she was off doing her own thing. You taught me how to open the credit accounts. Robert stared at his wife in horror. You stole your sister's inheritance, used her identity for credit fraud, and you knew about this before we married. It wasn't like that, Allison protested, tears starting to fall. Mother explained it. Samantha owed us after everything the family did for her. The trust was really meant for both of us anyway. Actually, I said, pulling out another document, Grandpa's letter specifically states that the trust was divided equally because he was concerned about Mother's financial management and favoritism. He wanted to ensure I would be protected. My mother, seeing her daughter's betrayal and the evidence mounting, shifted tactics with frightening speed. Her shoulders slumped and tears welled in her eyes, the perfect picture of a heartbroken mother. Samantha, darling, I know I've made terrible mistakes. I was trying to keep the family afloat after your father died. I always intended to pay it back. With what money? I asked coldly. The money you continued to steal from me year after year? The funds you used for luxury vacations and Allison's wedding? We can work this out, she pleaded, her voice trembling perfectly. There's no need for courts and lawyers. We're family. Family doesn't steal from each other. Family doesn't forge signatures or file false police reports. Family doesn't seat someone in a hallway at a wedding they paid for. My mother abandoned her tears as quickly as they had appeared, her expression hardening. Fine. If that's how you want to play this, remember that you're not the only one with evidence. We have witnesses who'll testify to your unstable behavior, your jealousy issues. Who do you think people will believe me? A respected widow who sacrificed everything for her children? Or you, a bitter single woman in her 30s with a history of emotional problems? They'll believe the evidence, I replied calmly. The forensic accounting reports, the handwriting analysis on the forged documents, the credit applications with addresses linked to you and Allison, the original trust paperwork that proves your copies were altered. For the first time, genuine fear flickered in my mother's eyes. And they'll believe the recordings, Michael added, holding up his phone, like the one I'm making right now, where you've essentially confessed to fraud and attempted to commit me to a psychiatric facility under false pretenses. And my recordings, I added, pulling the small device from my pocket, including this conversation and several others where you and Allison discussed your strategies for discrediting me. The room fell silent. As my mother and sister realized the completeness of their defeat, Allison broke first. "What do you want, money? Your precious inheritance back? Fine, take it. Is that enough to make you happy?" "This isn't about money anymore," I said quietly. "This is about years of manipulation, gaslighting, and theft. This is about justice." "Justice?" My mother laughed bitterly. "You want to destroy this family for justice." "You destroyed this family long ago," I replied, gathering my documents. "I'm simply bringing it into the light." I turned to leave, feeling a weight lifting from my shoulders with each step. "You walk out that door, you're no longer my daughter," my mother called after me, her voice cracking with rage. I paused at the doorway, looking back at the woman who had shaped so much of my pain. "I stopped being your daughter the moment you decided to steal my inheritance rather than celebrate my achievements. The difference is now I know it too." As I walked out of that house for the final time, Robert and Michael followed. Behind us I could hear Allison's sobs and my mother's voice rising in angry recriminations. Their carefully constructed world of lies was collapsing, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. In the driveway, Robert spoke first. "I'm filing for annulment tomorrow. I can't be married to someone capable of this." I nodded, understanding the pain of his disillusionment all too well. Michael touched my arm gently. "Are you okay?" For the first time in months, my answer was completely honest. "No, but I will be." As we drove away from the house that had never truly been my home, I felt neither triumph nor sorrow, only the quiet certainty that I was finally free. The legal proceedings that followed were both simpler and more complex than I had anticipated. With the overwhelming evidence we had compiled, including recorded confessions, forensic financial reports, and the original trust documents, my mother and Allison faced little choice but to seek a settlement rather than endure a public trial. The criminal charges were harder to navigate emotionally. Identity theft and fraud carried potential prison sentences, and despite everything they had done, I struggled with the idea of my mother and sister behind bars. After lengthy discussions with Marcus and considerable soul-searching, I agreed to a plea deal proposed by the district attorney. My mother received 5 years of probation, substantial fines, and was required to complete 1,000 hours of community service. More significantly for her, she was barred from serving on any charitable boards or foundation committees, positions that had defined her social standing for decades. Allison received 3 years of probation, financial penalties, and mandatory counseling. The civil case resulted in the return of my full inheritance plus interest, amounting to just over $3.1 million. The court also ordered them to pay my legal fees and an additional $500 0 punitive damages. The financial restitution was satisfying, but the true victory was in the validation, formal legal acknowledgement that I had been wronged. Michael faced professional consequences for his brief disappearance during our investigation, but his recordings of my mother and sister's attempts to bribe and threaten him ultimately protected his position at his firm. His brother Robert was not so fortunate in his personal life. The annulment proceedings were expedited, but still painful, with Allison fighting bitterly until the evidence of her fraud was presented to her attorney, who promptly advised her to settle. Throughout that difficult fall and winter, I focused on rebuilding my life. With my reclaimed finances, I purchased a small but beautiful house in a quiet neighborhood across town, my first real home that wasn't a rental. I established a routine of therapy sessions with Dr. Cohen, daily walks in the nearby park, and weekly dinners with my small but growing circle of genuine friends. My grandmother moved out of the nursing facility and into an independent living apartment, where she flourished, her confusion seemingly diminishing once she was no longer under my mother's controlling influence. We had lunch together every Sunday, slowly rebuilding our relationship, without the toxic dynamics that had pervaded family gatherings in the past. Finding new employment proved challenging given the damage to my professional reputation, but my former boss provided a glowing reference that eventually helped me secure a position at a smaller firm where I could rebuild my career on my own terms. Almost exactly 1 year after the wedding that had set everything in motion, I received an unexpected letter postmarked from a rehabilitation center in Arizona. Allison's handwriting was instantly recognizable. "Sam, I don't expect forgiveness, and I'm not writing to ask for it. The counselors here say I need to make amends as part of my recovery, but I know some things can't be fixed with words on paper. I've been diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder. The therapists say it explains a lot but excuses nothing. I'm trying to understand how I became someone who could hurt her own sister so callously. Mother refuses treatment. She still believes we did nothing wrong. I used to believe that too, but I can't anymore. I'm sorry. Not just for the money but for the years of cruelty, for the wedding seating, for trying to convince everyone you were crazy, for everything. I don't expect a response. I just needed you to know. Allison." I sat with the letter for a long time, feeling neither anger nor forgiveness, just a complicated sadness for the sister relationship we had never truly had. I didn't respond, but I kept the letter as a reminder of how far I had come. That same evening, I hosted a small dinner party. Robert and his parents, Michael, my grandmother, and a few close friends who had stood by me through everything. As we gathered around my dining table, the conversation flowing easily and laughter filling my home, I realized something profound had shifted within me. The inheritance I had fought so hard to reclaim had provided financial security, yes, but the true inheritance I had claimed was my sense of self-worth, my ability to set boundaries, to recognize manipulation, to demand respect. Those were gifts that could never be stolen or squandered. Later, after the guests had left, Michael stayed behind to help clean up. We had grown closer over the months, our friendship deepening into something that felt like possibility. "Penny, for your thoughts?" he asked, finding me staring out the window at my small garden. "I was just thinking about that wedding," I replied. "How sitting alone at that hallway table felt like the lowest moment of my life. And now," I smiled, feeling the genuine warmth of it reach my eyes. "Now I realize it was actually the beginning of something better." Walking away from that table was the first time I chose myself. "To choosing yourself," Michael said, raising his coffee mug in a mock toast. I clinked my mug against his. "And to unexpected silver linings." As we stood there in comfortable silence, I thought about the long journey from that hallway table to this peaceful moment in my own home. The path had been painful beyond measure, filled with betrayals and heartbreak, but it had led me here to authenticity, to strength, to people who valued me for exactly who I was. Sometimes the most important family isn't the one you're born into, but the one you build around yourself, person by person, choice by choice. And sometimes the most profound act of self-love is simply walking away from a table where you're not welcome, toward a future where you set your own place of honor. Before I wrap up this story, I'd love to know if you've ever had to make a difficult choice to stand up for yourself against family pressure. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you found value in my journey, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories of overcoming family drama and finding personal strength. Share this video with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to walk away from toxic situations even when they're wrapped in family ties. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, sometimes the family you choose is more important than the family you're born into.